60 people were clapping for my brother when my father handed him a company that wasn't his to give. I was standing near the back, by the dessert table nobody had touched yet, holding a glass of champagne I had no intention of drinking. I watched my father, Walter, raise his hand for quiet. I watched him pull a folded letter from his breast pocket, the one he'd been rehearsing in the mirror for weeks, though he didn't know I knew that. He said that after 38 years, it was time. He said the company needed a leader with vision, with hunger, with the kind of fire that builds empires. He said that man was his son, Trevor. The room rose to its feet. I did not rise. I did not need to. Because the company my father was giving away, the one with his name on the building and his face on the website, had not belonged to him in any way that mattered for the last 11 months. It belonged to me. Before I tell you what happened in the 90 seconds after that applause started, and why it never got the chance to finish, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this one travels. My name is Claire. I'm 33 years old. To my father, I have always been the daughter who was good with numbers, a phrase he uses the way other people say good with children or good at parking. A pleasant, minor talent. Useful in the right context. Never the context that mattered. Sterling Industrial, the company my grandfather founded and my father expanded into a $4.2 million regional manufacturing operation. I am the controlling shareholder, the person who restructured its entire debt position 18 months ago, and the only reason it survived a supply chain collapse that should have ended it. My father does not know that last part fully, not yet. He's about to. To understand the dessert table I was standing near, you need to understand the table I grew up sitting at. My father built Sterling Industrial out of a single welding shop he inherited from his own father in 1987. He worked it into something real, 60 employees, 3 manufacturing lines, a reputation in the regional supply chain that took decades to earn. He was, by any honest account, a man who built something out of almost nothing. He was also a man with a very specific idea of what a successor looked like. That idea had a name, and the name was Trevor. Trevor is 2 years older than me. Growing up, he got the tour of the factory floor on Saturday mornings while I got dropped at my grandmother's. He got introduced to foreman by name. He got handed a hard hat at 12 years old and told, "Someday, son." I got told I was good with numbers. I went to school for accounting because it was the thing I was allowed to be good at without anyone feeling threatened by it. I built a career at a regional CPA firm, made partner by 30, and specialized, almost accidentally at first, then very deliberately, in restructuring distressed manufacturing companies. Trevor went to work at Sterling straight out of college. He held the title of Vice President of Operations for 9 years. In that time, the company's margins eroded steadily. Equipment maintenance got deferred. 3 of his hires were friends from college with no relevant experience. My father covered for every misstep with the specific tenderness reserved for a son you've already decided is the future, regardless of what the present keeps showing you. I watched this from a careful distance for years, the distance of someone who had learned not to offer opinions that wouldn't be welcomed. Then, 18 months ago, the distance collapsed. Sterling's primary steel supplier went under without warning. The replacement contracts came in at margins that made the company's existing pricing structure unsustainable within 2 quarters. My father called me on a Tuesday night, his voice doing something I had never heard it do before, cracking, just slightly, around the edges. He said the bank was calling the line of credit. He said Trevor didn't know what to do. He said he didn't know what to do. I drove to the factory the next morning before sunrise. What I found was worse than he described. The receivables were a mess. 3 vendor contracts had been signed by Trevor with payment terms that made no sense for the company's cash position. The line of credit was 3 weeks from technical default. If the bank called it, Sterling would be in receivership within a quarter, and my father would lose a company his own father had built with his hands. I did not say I told you so. I have never once said I told you so in my entire life to anyone, even when I had earned the right to. I said, give me 90 days. What I did in those 90 days was not glamorous. It was the kind of work nobody applauds at a party. I restructured the receivables. I renegotiated the credit line personally, putting up collateral from my own portfolio because the bank wanted additional security, and my father had nothing left to offer that they hadn't already taken a lien against. I terminated 2 of the vendor contracts Trevor had signed, absorbing the penalty clauses out of my own savings because the alternative was worse. I brought in a turnaround specialist I'd worked with on 3 prior restructurings. I worked 60-hour weeks at Sterling while still running my CPA practice because the company could not afford to hire what I was doing for free. By the end of those 90 days, Sterling was stable. By the end of the first year, it was profitable again, more profitable, in fact, than it had been in 6 years. The price of my involvement, the actual legal price, was this. In exchange for the capital I'd put up to satisfy the bank's collateral requirements and absorb the contract penalties, I took an equity position in Sterling Industrial. A controlling equity position. 56%, properly documented, properly filed with the company's registered agent, exactly as our family's corporate attorney structured it at the time. My father signed those documents himself. He signed them in the specific state of a man who is drowning and will sign anything that looks like a life raft. I do not believe, even now, that he understood what 56% meant in any way beyond Claire is helping us survive this. It was not a detail-oriented man in matters of paperwork. That had always been my job in the family, the unglamorous job, the job nobody throws a party for. I never hid the structure from him. I sent him copies of everything. I had our attorney explain it to him twice, in plain language, in a conference room with coffee and no clock on the wall, because I wanted him to understand exactly what he was agreeing to. He nodded both times. He signed both times. He simply never quite let it become real to him, the way a person doesn't let a diagnosis become real until the day it changes their life. The party had been my father's idea for months. He'd called it a transition celebration. He'd rented the event space at the Worthington Hotel, the same room where he'd held Sterling's 40th anniversary party. He'd invited the bank's relationship manager, 2 of the company's largest clients, the mayor's office, 4 cousins, and 60 other people who had some connection to Sterling Industrial's 38-year history. He told me about it 3 weeks ago, his voice full of the particular warmth he reserves for plans he's excited about. He said it was time to formally announce Trevor as the new president and CEO. He said the board, meaning himself and Trevor, since my father had never formally constituted an actual board, had discussed it at length. He said he wanted me there to celebrate as a family. I asked him if Trevor knew about the company's current debt structure. My father said that wasn't really the point of tonight. I told him I would be there. I had also, 3 days before the party, called our family's attorney, the same one who structured the equity transaction 18 months ago, and asked her a single question. Did my father have any legal authority to transfer operational control of Sterling Industrial to Trevor without my consent as the majority shareholder? She said no. She said it plainly, the way she says everything. She said any such transfer would be symbolic at best and legally void at worst, and that if I wanted, she could attend the event in case it became necessary to clarify the company's actual ownership structure on the record. I told her I hoped it wouldn't be necessary. I told her to come anyway. My father stood at the small podium near the dessert table and read from his folded letter. He spoke about legacy. He spoke about the fire in Trevor's eyes since childhood. He spoke about handing down what his own father had handed to him. He did not once look at me while he spoke. I don't think it occurred to him that he should. Trevor stood beside him in a new suit, nodding at the right moments, his wife in the front row recording on her phone with tears already forming, the kind of tears that arrive on cue at exactly the moment a camera is rolling. My father said the words. Effective immediately, full operational control, President and Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Industrial. The room rose. 60 people on their feet. Glasses raised. The sound of applause filling a ballroom that had once held my father's 40th anniversary party, the one where Trevor got a hard hat, and I got a thank you card from the company for handling the books that quarter. Sandra, our attorney, stood up from her table near the back. She did not raise her voice. She has never needed to. Walter, she said, and the room's applause faltered at the sound of a name spoken with that particular authority. Before this goes any further, I think the room deserves accurate information about Sterling's current ownership structure. My father turned. Confusion first, the genuine kind. Then slowly, something else. Sandra, this isn't really the moment for. It's exactly the moment, she said. You've just told 60 people that you've appointed a new CEO of a company you do not have sole authority to make decisions for. The room had gone the particular kind of quiet that happens right before a structure everyone agreed to believe in starts to crack. Trevor's smile was still on his face, but it had stopped being connected to anything behind it. What is she talking about? He said. Not to Sandra. To my father. My father did not answer. He was looking at me now, finally, for the first time all evening, with an expression I had spent 33 years waiting to see and had never quite believed I'd get the chance to. Walter signed an equity restructuring agreement 18 months ago, Sandra said, addressing the room with the calm precision of someone reading a weather report. As part of that agreement, Claire holds 56% of Sterling Industrial. She is the controlling shareholder of record. Any transfer of operational authority requires her consent. That consent was not sought. A woman near the front, the bank's relationship manager, I recognized her face from the credit renegotiation meetings 18 months ago, nodded slowly, the nod of someone who had simply been waiting to see if anyone else in the room knew what she already knew. This is a mistake, Trevor said. His voice had risen half an octave. This is some kind of paperwork thing. Dad, tell them. My father did not tell them anything. He was still looking at me. I set down my champagne glass. I walked to the front of the room. Not quickly. Not for effect. Just at the pace of a person who has been waiting a long time and is no longer in a hurry. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I said, and I meant it, though I understood that what I was about to say would feel like exactly that to at least 2 people in this room. 18 months ago, this company was 3 weeks from receivership. I want everyone here to understand what that means in practice. It means the bank seizes the assets. It means 60 employees lose their jobs with no notice. It means a company my grandfather built with his hands ceases to exist. I looked at the bank's relationship manager. She nodded once, confirming it. I restructured the debt. I personally guaranteed additional collateral. I terminated contracts that were bleeding the company dry, using my own funds to absorb the penalties. In exchange, I took an equity position, fully documented, fully disclosed, signed by my father with full legal counsel present. 56%. I am the majority owner of Sterling Industrial. I turned to Trevor. I know this isn't the announcement you were expecting tonight. I want to be clear that I have no interest in humiliating you, and I have no interest in running this company in a way that erases what our grandfather and our father built. But I cannot stand here and let 60 people believe a transfer happened that has no legal basis. That wouldn't be kindness. That would just be a different kind of lie. Trevor's wife had stopped recording. My father finally spoke. His voice had lost the rehearsed quality from the podium. It sounded, for the first time that night, like an actual person. You should have told me, he said quietly. Not for the room. Just for me. I told you 18 months ago, I said. I sent you the documents. Sandra explained them to you twice. I have never once hidden this from you, Dad. You just never let yourself believe it mattered. He looked, for a moment, very old. What happens now? He asked. Now, I said, we go sit down, the 3 of us with Sandra, and we figure out what Sterling actually needs going forward. Not what feels right at party. What the company needs to survive the next 10 years. Trevor did not stay for cake. He left with his wife 20 minutes later, his jaw tight, his new suit slightly less impressive than it had been an hour before. I did not chase after him. Some conversations need distance before they can happen honestly, and I understood that this was going to be one of them. The party did not officially end. It just slowly, awkwardly resumed, smaller conversations, a band that kept playing because no one had told them to stop, 60 people quietly recalibrating what they'd just watched, the way a room does when something true interrupts something performed. My father found me near the dessert table an hour later. The same table I'd been standing near when this all started. He didn't say much. He asked if I wanted cake. I said yes. He stood there and ate cake at his company's transition party that had transitioned into something neither of us had planned. And for the first time in 33 years, he asked me a question about the business that wasn't really about the business at all. He asked me what I actually wanted to do with it. I told him I wanted to run it well. I told him I wanted Trevor to have a real role if he was willing to do real work for it, the same way I'd had to. I told him I didn't want a coronation. I wanted a company that survived the next 38 years the way it had survived the last 38, through actual labor, not inheritance. He nodded slowly. He said that sounded like something his own father would have said. I drove home that night past the factory, dark and quiet under its security lights, the same building where Trevor got hard hats and tours, and I got dropped at my grandmother's house. I didn't feel triumphant. Triumph is loud, and I'd spent the whole evening being quiet on purpose. What I felt was something steadier than triumph. A specific, settled feeling of a debt finally being recorded correctly, after years of being entered on the wrong side of the ledger. In the morning, I had a company to run. I had, in every way that mattered, always had a company to run. Now everyone in that room finally knew it too.